The Democratic National Committee struggling to regroup in the wake of overwhelming election losses. The party laying off long-term permanent staffers now with just 1 day's notice and no severance pay. A statement from the DNC staff union called the move a result of callous and short-sighted mismanagement by senior leadership, noting that the party would not acknowledge the extent of the layoffs or plans for future cuts. The scathing reaction from the staff union comes as Democrats search for a new leader. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison is not expected to seek a second term for the party's top spot.
Okay, so elections, right? Like we all know there's always some rearranging going on in the political world, strategies and all that. It's like a post-election shuffle.
Yeah, exactly.
This time around at the DNC, things are, things are kind of different. There's a bit of a twist.
Yeah, you could say that. It's not just the usual post-election reshuffle. It's something else. The DNC union, they're taking a really unique approach to the staff layoffs that have been happening.
Layoffs, yeah. We're not talking about just a few people here.
No.
The DNC union saying that, get this, like 2/3 of their workforce is being let go. 2/3.
It's a lot of people.
That's massive.
Yeah.
And the thing is, instead of, the usual protests and everything, they've started a GoFundMe page.
Right. It's not your typical union tactic. It's not what you usually see.
No. So the question is, why a GoFundMe? Well, it seems the big issue, the big sticking point, is severance pay. Or the lack of it, I guess, for these laid-off staffers. And the union's claiming that they were promised job security after the election.
Right.
So, I mean, if that's true, that's a pretty big breach of trust.
It raises a lot of questions.
Yeah.
About the DNC's commitment to its employees. When you think about it, campaign work is demanding.
Totally.
These people, they dedicate themselves completely.
Yeah.
And they know it's temporary, but to be let go without anything, no safety net, it's got to be tough.
And the union's not holding back. They're really criticizing the DNC leadership. In fact, on their GoFundMe page, they call the DNC's actions callous.
Wow.
And short-sighted, especially, because some employees were apparently told their jobs were safe.
That's rough.
Yeah, and the DNC's response is, well, it's interesting. They're not really addressing the severance pay thing directly, but they do insist that they followed the rules, the collective bargaining agreement.
The CBA.
Right, the CBA. Now, for those of us who aren't, legal experts, can you break down what a CBA is and how it might apply here?
Sure. Basically, a CBA, it's like a contract between the employer and the union.
That's okay.
Outlines things like wages and working conditions and severance packages.
So in this case, the DNC is saying, hey, whatever's in the CBA about severance, we followed it.
Exactly.
But even if they're technically, legally in the clear, isn't there a bit of an ethical issue here?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Even if they followed the letter of the law, the CBA, there's the question of the spirit of the agreement. Did they really uphold what was, understood?
Right.
Were employees led to believe their jobs were safe? And was that expectation broken? That's where it gets messy. And it's what the union's trying to highlight with this GoFundMe campaign.
Okay, so let's talk about the GoFundMe itself. They're trying to raise $25,000. And as of November 25th, they've already gotten over $15,000.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. But it's not just the money. It's the stories the union's sharing. They're making a real case here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's strategic. They're focusing on the human impact of these layoffs. It's not just a list of demands. It's real people. Their stories.
Right.
Single parents facing money problems, people expecting babies who suddenly lose their income. It makes it much more real. It goes beyond the political stuff. It's about the real consequences for these people.
It's like they're saying, look, this isn't just a game. These are real people's lives that are being disrupted.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes you think about the ethics of how parties treat their staff. These are the people who work so hard to get them elected. So we've got mass layoffs, possible broken promises, and a union trying to help its members in a very unusual way.
Right.
And it's all happening within the DNC, the party that always talks about worker rights.
It's definitely not your average post-election shakeup. It goes deeper than that.
Yeah, there are some big issues at play here. And the fact that it's the DNC makes it even more interesting.
Absolutely.
It seems like this might be exposing some cracks in the image of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Are they really the champions of the working class? Or is that just something they say during campaigns?
That's a great question.
What does this situation tell us about the bigger picture of the Democratic Party? Are we seeing a disconnect between the leaders and the regular members? Let's dig into that a little more.
It's not a good look for the DNC, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They're being called hypocritical. Critics are pointing out, they talk about supporting workers, but then this happens to their own union.
It's like, do as I say, not as I do. And that kind of thing can really hurt a party, especially one that relies on organized labor.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's not just, how it looks. This could have real consequences for the Democrats,
Well,
inside the party and out.
right.
Internally, it could alienate their base even more and create a divide between the leadership and the people on the ground, the organizers who get the voters out.
It's like a self-inflicted wound at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
They're already dealing with losing the election, trying to figure out what went wrong, how to move forward. And now this.
The timing couldn't be worse. They've got internal divisions. They're struggling to get a clear message out. And now this very public fight, it makes them look disorganized, unstable, and that's not what you want when you're trying to win back trust.
So how does this all connect to the bigger problems for the Democrats? I mean, they've always been the party of workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now they're accused of abandoning their own staff. That's a big contradiction.
It really is. And it fits into a story that's been building for a while now. A story about whether the Democrats have lost touch with their values, with the working class. This whole layoff thing, it just gives more fuel to that fire. It makes people think they've become too focused on, the elites.
Like those stories on the GoFundMe page, they're kind of a mini version of the bigger issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the Democrats can't treat their own people fairly, how can they convince voters they'll fight for them?
Exactly. That's what they need to figure out. They have to close that gap between what they say and what they do. Show that they're serious about worker rights, not just when it's convenient.
Okay, so internal divisions, we know there's always that tension, right? Between the progressives and the moderates.
Right.
Is this making things worse?
It could.
Yeah.
Especially if people see it as, the party putting money ahead of its workers. Some progressives might see this as proof that the party is willing to compromise too much just to win elections.
It's like they're walking a tightrope, trying to keep everyone happy, but in this political climate, you have to pick a side and stick with it.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act. And they haven't always been so graceful. This whole thing with the layoffs, it shows that tension between being practical and pushing for bigger changes.
So how does that affect their message? We hear a lot about how the Democrats can't connect with voters, especially in those key states. Is this part of the problem?
Definitely. When you have different groups within the party pulling in different directions,
Wow.
it's hard to have a clear message, one that makes sense to everyone. Voters see that lack of focus. And it makes them think the party can't decide what it wants, doesn't have strong beliefs.
Like they're trying to please everyone and end up pleasing no one.
Yeah. The message gets watered down. It loses its power. It doesn't connect with people on an emotional level. And people want that. They want someone who's real, who understands them, who has real answers.
So they need to figure out their message, bring the party together, and oh yeah, they're also behind in fundraising.
It's a lot to deal with.
Big time. They're being outspent by the Republicans, which makes it harder to get their message out, get people to vote, and just, compete.
Money matters in politics. There's no doubt about that. But this fundraising problem, it's not just about the money. It's about something deeper. It's about a lack of excitement, a lack of trust. Like maybe people don't believe the Democrats are fighting for them anymore. They need to change that perception fast. They have to convince people that they're not just the party of, the way things are. The party is rich and powerful. They have to show that they're the party that fights for the working class, the middle class, for the people who are struggling.
Okay, so we've got the layoffs, the division within the party, the problems with their message, and they're behind in fundraising. It's a tough spot for the Democrats.
It is. It's a real challenge. But sometimes challenges can make you stronger. This could be a chance for the Democrats to look at themselves honestly, to really figure out what they stand for, to reconnect with their base, to come up with a vision for the future that excites people.
It's like they're at a crossroads. They can either hold on to the past or try something new.
And that brings us to the big question. What's next for the Democratic Party?
What's next? Yeah, let's talk about that. What can they actually do to turn things around? All right, so we've been talking about the challenges for the Democrats, the layoffs, the disagreements within the party, the messaging issues, and the fundraising gap. It's like it's a real turning point for them. What's the next chapter? What's next for the Democrats?
Well, they have to admit there's a problem, right? They can't keep doing the same old thing and expect different results. This layoff thing, it's tough, but it could be a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's more than just fixing this one thing. It's about the bigger problems that caused it.
Right. They need to take a good hard look at themselves, ask some tough questions. What do they actually stand for? Who are they fighting for? Are they actually living up to what they say? If they want people to trust them again, they have to prove they're not just, politicians making empty promises.
It's about being real, right? Voters can spot a fake from a mile away. They want someone who's genuine, someone who gets it, someone who's actually going to fight for them.
Exactly. And that's where the messaging comes in. The Democrats need a message that really connects with people on an emotional level. A message that speaks to their hopes and fears, what they want, what they're worried about.
So it's not just about, policies and numbers. It's about connecting with people on a human level, telling stories that resonate, giving them a vision of the future they can actually believe in.
Right. They need to go beyond the abstract stuff, focus on real solutions to real problems. They need to talk about healthcare, education, jobs, the economy in a way that people can relate to, in a way that shows they understand what people are going through.
So it's about less talking points, more real conversation, acknowledging the struggles and offering real solutions, not just promises.
And they have to do all this while figuring out those internal divisions. They need to bridge the gap between the progressives and the moderates, find common ground, show a united front.
It's easier said than done, I imagine. Those are some pretty deep differences. But it seems like they have to unify if they want to get anything done.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to realize they're stronger together. Focus on what unites them. The shared values of the Democratic Party, social justice, economic fairness, opportunity for all.
Finding that sweet spot, right. Policies and principles that appeal to a lot of people, from the most progressive to the more moderate. Building a big tent that includes everyone, but stays true to those core values.
And they can't forget about the fundraising. They can't compete if they're always being outspent.
So how do they catch up? It seems pretty tough with all the big money in politics.
It won't be easy, but it's not impossible. They need to find new donors, reach out to smaller donors, grassroots groups, people who might have given up on the party.
It's about earning back trust, showing people that every contribution matters, giving regular people a voice.
Exactly. They have to convince people that the Democratic Party is worth investing in, that it's the best way to make the changes they want to see.
So it's a big challenge, a lot to do. But it's not hopeless, right? They've got some good things going for them.
Of course. One of their biggest strengths is their diversity. The Democratic Party is a mix of so many different views and experiences. And that can be a real advantage if they use it right.
Celebrating their differences, but finding common ground on those core values.
And they have a lot of support from young people, minorities, women. These are groups that are only getting bigger, and their support will be important in future elections.
So they need to nurture those relationships. Listen to those voices. Make sure their policies reflect what those communities need and want.
Exactly. And don't forget about the power of the Democratic brand. Historically, they've been seen as the party of the working class, the party that fights for social justice and economic equality. They need to bring that back, make it relevant to today's problems.
Reminding people of what they stand for, their history of fighting for the underdog, their vision for a more fair and equal society.
And they have to do it all with a sense of urgency. Time is running out. The stakes are high. The choices they make now will have a huge impact for years to come, not just for the party, but for the whole country.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means we're living in a really important time in American history. The Democratic Party's at a crossroads, and the choices they make will affect all of us.
Stay informed, stay involved, and most importantly, make your voice heard. Our democracy depends on it.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Democratic Party. We'll keep exploring the political landscape in future episodes, giving you the insights and analysis you need to understand these complicated times. Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.